Welcome to From Fear to Fearless show. This show is all about sharing stories of ordinary people who have done and continue to do extraordinary things despite their fear. Fear is a normal part of growth and change, but for many of us, especially for children, fear becomes a factor and we have a hard time pushing past our fear. Our mission on this show is to share stories of others who have pushed past their fear and have done some amazing things. This show is for parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, or anyone who works with children or other parents. I hope the stories we share will ignite and inspire you to share with kids in your life. I hope these stories will influence and impact the relationship with fear for the children. So, let me explain how the structure of this show is. So, for the first 20 minutes, we will have our guests share their experience with fear, as well as as we all know that fear is a normal part of our lives. After the 20 minutes is over, we will continue to our wisdom circle right here in the show, and we will continue our conversation about fear. And our guest will share tips and strategies and their insight on how you can help kids manage their fear. Our guest will answer your questions as well. So today, our guest is Judy Arnall. Judy Arnall is a certified brain and child development specialist and a master of non punitive parenting and education practices. She is the founder of Attachment Parenting Canada Association and it is a best selling author of 5 print books translated into 5 languages, including Discipline Without Distress and Parenting with Patience. She also compiled a handy tips book titled Attachment Parenting Tips Raising Toddlers to Teens. Her latest book, Unschooling to University, Relationships Matter Most in a World Crammed with Content, is becoming a bestseller in an age of parents seeking educational options. So, welcome, Judy, and thank you for coming onto the show today. And I had an opportunity to have 2 summits with you in the past. So, thank you again for being here. How
Thank
are
you.
you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Very, very good. So,
Good.
you say that fear is good for soul. Is this really true?
Well, it may not seem like it at the time, but yes, it is. Like you say, it's a necessary part of life. It's something that happens to everybody in different stages, and it's on a continuum. It's definitely for some people, it's a lot more manageable. For other people's, it can be pretty paralyzing. And for children, they really need their support person's help in handling the fear that they're going to get in their lives. Um, so we could go through the age span when kids are little, like around age 2 to 5. It's a good sign of brain development when they start experiencing fears. And typical fears at that age are monsters in the closet at night, worrying about dogs, dogs that might bite, animals that might bite. I remember my son, he would never go with me in the car wash because he hated the brushes going over the car.
Mhm.
Same with going to a theater. It was too enclosed for him. So he hated that too. So at that age, fears are a sign of a healthy respect for things that could happen. So it is a sign of brain development where kids are thinking ahead and going, oh, this dog could bite me if I put my hand out to pet him. Now I'm scared. So that's good. And if parents and caregivers recognize that that is a normal part of childhood, there are things they can do to ease that, but it is normal. So as kids grow, fears continue to come, but they're more in stages. They're what's happening at those milestones for children. So, for example, starting kindergarten or starting grade 1 or starting a new room at daycare. There's a lot of anxiety, fears of, oh, what would happen? Whoops, are we back?
We're on. You're here.
What could happen? And that's again a sign of brain development of thinking ahead, entertaining consequences. That comes about age 5, 6, when children can start to think, well, if this happens and this might happen, or if I do this, this might happen. So good sign that they're thinking ahead on consequences and what could happen. And then that continues on to the school age years and then the teen years. Teenagers, like adults, have about 30,000 thoughts in their brain every day. And a lot of what keeps school-age children and teenagers awake at night worrying is fears around school, around friends, around the peer group, fitting in to wherever they are at that stage in their life. So that can cause a lot of anxiety. We've seen that since COVID, where children have been, and adults have been, out of the daily routines of getting together with people and going to a workplace. And we've been really shuttered and cozy at home. And now we have to go through that again. And I've seen it with my kids. I felt it myself as the normal anxiety of, oh no, I have to go someplace now. I have to meet people in person. And then there are fears with later stages of life too, when parents getting together in a relationship, a more committed relationship. Maybe they're having their first child, and that introduces a whole new set of fears and worries. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Right? And then it goes on through
Absolutely.
generations.
Yes, yes. So, I want you to, if you don't mind, share with us one of your fears that you might have overcome, and how was that for you?
Sure. One of my biggest fears was speaking in big groups or in public. And it was bad enough. I never had much practice in elementary school, but when I got to university, I was careful to pick courses where I didn't have to do any oral presentations. If there was an oral presentation, I would drop the course, which is really bad. And I managed to get my degree. Yeah. But then I was a young mom. I had 3 kids under age 3. And my husband said to me one day, he said, I'm going to go to Toastmasters because I need help making presentations at work. And I thought, there's no way you're getting out of the house again without me one night of the week. So I'm coming with you. And I went to Toastmasters more for the social experience, but having to give a speech was terrifying. And the first speech I gave was, it was talking about myself, which is supposed to be really good, but it was terrifying to me. But that's a really good example of positive stress and fear, is that it makes you prepare, you handle it, you face it head on, and afterwards you feel really, really good that you did it. It's good for your self-esteem. It's good for your self-confidence. And that's why we can't shield our kids from fears. We have to help them face fears, and then they gradually build that confidence that they can face things, face their fears, face their anxieties, and feel good about it after.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was my next question. How did you overcome? So you said by going to this, Toastmaster events, I guess you continued. You didn't drop off right away because you got scared. You pushed yourself through.
I really wanted to quit. There were many times I quit. And they have this little part of the program where they give you a question and you have 2 minutes to make an answer. And I just can't think on the spot like that, right? So it was very challenging, but very good. And more, and I really liked, especially when you have kids around, it's kind of nice to go to an adult group and you got 6 minutes, you get the floor, you get to say whatever you want to say, kind of thing. So it really, really helped me make presentations, and I encourage my kids to go try public speaking. I know in some schools around the world, they start public speaking in kindergarten
Wow.
to get kids used to
Right.
that fear, because there are a lot of accomplished people in the world, and there's a lot of musicians and speakers, and a lot of people, about 80% of people, would rather eat spiders than give a talk in public.
Mm. Yeah,
It's
it's a big
that
fear.
scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. Is it because it's the fear of judgment or others?
Yes, it's that too. It's a fear of judgment. It's a fear of failing, of messing up, forgetting what you're going to say. Um, but it not even just that. Sometimes you just can't pinpoint it. It's just a fear of dread of it's just something you don't want to do. And other people have that with going into an airplane or,
Mhm.
petting a dog. They have that same sense of dread and fear.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, and so you said earlier that you would never take a course, right? If it had a presentation. So those are our mechanisms, right, to protect ourselves. We create stories, don't we, when we have
Yes.
these fears?
Yes, we do. And we definitely avoid things. I've seen it in my kids when they had to do oral presentations at university, and even I don't know, kids nowadays, they don't even want to show their face on Zoom calls in
Mhm.
classes. Actually, I find that with adults. And it's not that they have to speak or anything, but just show us your face on camera, and they don't want to do it. They're scared. And it could be judgment, it could be just fear of putting yourself out there. There's a lot of reasons why people want to avoid fear, and a lot of coping mechanisms of how they do it.
Yeah, yeah. I can connect with you. I was always fear of speaking in public too. I think that is one of the biggest fears. As you said, people might eat spider, but not, do a presentation. It's that it just brings, and you shut down, right? When this fear come up, all these, chemicals that are producing in your, and you want to just run away from the situation.
Yes, you do want to run away. And I'm not sugarcoating it. Things do mess up out there. I remember I had to do a talk for a group of parents on sibling fighting. And when I got to the talk, I prepared, I had great slides, and I got to the talk, and somebody miscommunicated, but they were all parents, first time parents that were pregnant still. They didn't have baby yet. So I'm like, oh no, this is totally unrelated to what you want to know about. So I think a lot of the fear is fear of messing up. And the first time you do a speech and your mind goes blank and everybody's out there watching you and waiting, and our vision of how we think it's going to go is way worse than how it goes. Like, people are really, really nice, and they're so forgiving, and they're not going to call you names and throw tomatoes at you. They're
Mhm.
really nice.
Yes, absolutely. And but that's not how you feel when you're standing up. Like even this when I began this show, I was, a couple of times I even stopped and I had to recorrect what I was reading or saying. So it really matters. What at the end of the day is, I think somebody told me, stop thinking about internalizing it, like
Mhm,
deliver to the other people. Have
mhm.
you had anyone tell, like, you're there to deliver and someone understand you rather than thinking about what are they thinking, like talking that internal voice?
Yes, self-talk is so important. So yes, if you can remember, or you bring it on a piece of paper and write it down, and yeah, you're there to help people understand something new. And look at you now. You're doing fantastic, right? You're
Mhm.
you're there to help people, and going in with that kind of self-talk does help take the focus on, oh, do I look okay, or am I saying the right things. It puts the focus on someone else, and that takes the focus off you, and it really, really helps.
Yes,
It's a good
absolutely.
strategy.
So would you recommend people to going to Toastmaster? Did that help you at the end? Did you overcome your fear?
That and a lot of practice, right? So you may not want to go out and do a speech, but challenge yourself to do it anyways, right? And we learn more when we mess up. So give yourself permission to mess up. And you just get better with practice. This year I started bowling, and I am a really bad bowler. But like everything, the more you do it, the better you get at it, right? But
Yes.
fear is going to keep you from doing it.
Yes.
Same with when my kids first started to apply for jobs, they were very scared. That is a scary thing to do, is put yourself out there and say, here's why you should hire me. And but working through that fear and maybe getting the job makes it a lot easier next time.
Yes. Even my son, I'll tell him, go ask the cashier or someone in the store, go ask them something. He'll just go walk around and come back and say, I can't find them. But I just saw them pass him. I'm like, you didn't ask them. And he'll be like, he doesn't want to ask another person. Like, that's scared for young people too, to speak to another adult,
Mm-hmm.
ask a question, right? So because they're not, I don't know, it's something like, am I going to get in, I don't know what goes on. Like, what do you think goes on for a child when they are afraid to speak to an adult?
Probably the same thing that goes on in our heads too. It could just be anxiety. It could be they don't know what the adult's going to say. Maybe they're scared of the answer too. You never know,
Mm.
right? What they're thinking. But I think it's also just putting out your needs there is kind of scary for kids too.
Yeah, asking for their needs.
Especially if they've never done it before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's why the encouragement is important. Giving them little tasks to
Yeah.
go. That was
And
my first task for my son. Can you go ask cashier for this, or can you go ask them where can I find the item, right, in the store? Yeah.
yeah. And I have to say, some kids wouldn't even have fears about that. They're very extroverted.
Yeah.
And I have one son who would, no problem. He goes and talks to adults all the time. And then I have another son who's older and really, really struggles with it, really struggles. So you take kids where they are and don't compare them.
No,
Don't do what I just did.
no. They're
So,
different. They're all different.
yes.
Yes, yes, yes. So I have one last question for you in this segment. Is what would you tell your younger self about fear? If you,
I heard so I would say don't run from it, work with it. And I teach actually in my books and in my class, I talk about stress. And with fear, you can definitely feel it in the body, right?
yes,
Yeah. You feel it with a dry mouth, your heart's
beating.
racing, you're getting sweaty,
Mhm.
you know, you just, and your stomach feels like, even today I cannot eat breakfast before I do a morning keynote. I just can't.
Mhm.
Your body is concentrated on your brain and keeping your stress levels down. There, your body is not concentrating on feed me because you're in this heightened, we call it a sympathetic nervous system is kicking in with the fear, right?
Yes.
And that's a good thing. Your adrenaline's releasing, your cortisol's releasing. It's a good thing because it puts you into an energetic mode.
Mhm.
So when I go out and I do a speech, I am full of energy, right?
Mhm.
But you can only sustain that for so long because your body's in high stress.
Yes.
After the fear situation is done, then we relax. Then our body goes back to normal. The parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and heart rate goes down. But then you feel euphoria because you have did it. You've done it. You prepared, you faced it, you did it. Yay! It motivates you for the next time. And that's what we call positive stress. Everybody has that stress. And we encourage everyone, feel the sensations in your body. Don't run away from it. Feel it. Realize that you're not going to die of a heart attack. You're going to face this fear and you will be glad you did later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So, in this segment, we're going to end this and we'll continue with Judy talking about more strategies and tips that she can, give parents. So, thank you so much. And thank you for tuning into the show. If you have to go, that's okay. We will be here next Wednesday at 11 a.m. PST. If you are interested in making learning easy for your child, please book a call, Clarity Coaching call at our website www.learningsuccessacademy.com. Until next time, see what's on the other side of your fear. Let's ignite and inspire children to push past their fear and make fear not a factor for them. Let us help our kids learn and grow fearless. Let's influence them and impact them to see unlimited possibilities. So, thank you, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 11 a.m. PST if you have to go. But those of you who are staying with us, we will continue the conversation in our wisdom circle with Judy. So, Judy, I wanted to go back on few of the things you talked about earlier. Is doing it with fear anyway, right?
Mhm,
Feeling that stress.
mhm.
We all get all these emotions and sweaty hands, and feel like I'm gonna run. Bathroom breaks for some people, or just fly running away from it. So how can we help children handle this stress? How can we reduce it?
I think being a support person for children is very, very much a good thing. So trying to be around when the kids are there, um, and definitely telling them that everybody feels this way. It's normal to feel that way. Acknowledge their feelings. So let them understand that they're feeling fear, they're feeling anxiety, they're worried. Name those emotions for them. You're worried because this test is coming up and you have to give an oral presentation. It's okay to feel that way. Um, and so acknowledging how they feel and naming the emotions they're feeling so that helps them with their feeling vocabulary. I also found really helpful is practicing. So, for example, the other day, my son, first time ever, had to do a psychometric test for his university application. So, it's a test where they video you, so he'd be on camera, and ask you these questions, and they're judging you because they say they are. And your university entrance is based on that.
Wow.
He had never done one before. He was so scared. And so I said, okay, let's practice, because the more you practice, the more you know what the parameters is. It sometimes helps deal with the fear. So we set up a Zoom call, and I gave him some scenarios to practice with. And I think that helped a bit.
Mhm.
So definitely practice. If it's your child going to a new room at kindergarten, go with them, desensitize them to the place, introduce them around to the teachers and new kids. The more they get to see it, understand what that first day is going to be like, the better. So
Mhm.
those
So
are things.
even with the little kids, having those conversations are important, right? Because they can tell us about their emotions.
Oh, yes, they can. They may not use the words. They may just say, my tummy is feeling sick. And they're feeling anxiety, they're worried, they're feeling fearful, right? So
Yes.
telling them, oh, that's your body telling you that your body is feeling fear, and it's okay to feel that. We all feel that.
Yes. And why do you think in our culture fear is something we don't talk about? It's almost like people are just good at it, or you're just extrovert. But we're not always extrovert. What about those people in between? Like, I wouldn't call myself either way, right? Either side, introvert or extrovert. I'm kind of in the middle, but I like to do both. And when presentation comes, I do feel nervous.
And that's what I found out too, is that people who speak for a living, they speak all the time. They still feel nervous that first minute they're in there speaking. And it's kind of the motivation to make sure they're prepared and they get the energy from that. But everybody feels it. Even if they've been doing it for years and decades, they still feel it. So, um, and I think we um, I think we do. I think the feeling is that we're just, well, there's just so much to fear. But like anxiety is kind of fear that's not defined. You
Yeah.
can't, we, it's when you half think about it or you're trying to fall asleep at night and then it comes back and hits you, right? And
Mhm.
kids have that too. And I think, again, we could normalize that and kind of listen to how they feel about it. And then they feel that somebody understands it a bit.
Yeah. So that conversation, allowing them to speak it out and
Yeah.
naming it.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
And this is why I'm feeling my tummy, or this is why I'm sweating, because I am feeling stressed here. It's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they may not know they feel stressed, but it's for us to tell them that's what you're
Yes.
feeling.
Yes. Then the parents can come back in and say, and then also share some stories, right? Like I
Yes.
share stories. Like I feel
Yes.
the same way. I'm not.
Yes. That's a good point, is sharing. I mean, I tell my kids I didn't even pick my courses that I had to do in here. I ran away. It was so scary. But that was where I was at that time. And it doesn't mean that if you're fearful now, you will always be fearful. Job
Yes.
hunting will get better, starting new schools. And temperament definitely ties into that too. If you have a very sensitive child, they're going to have a bit harder time, lots more fears than a child that just jumps into new things like, yeah, bring it on, right?
Yeah.
Your kids that hold back and are very cautious are going to need a lot more support
Yes.
than the other kids. And that's okay too. We all differ in our needs for support.
Yes. And you talked about earlier different stages in the child's growth, and milestone brings new fear. And how could a parent be prepared for that? Should they be prepared ahead of time and talking to their kids, or should they just wait? What would be the best?
I would wait, but I would say, and I learned this through parenting, is clear your schedule because kids are going to need your time and attention. So, the night before school starts, be sure you're around. Don't go out to a movie with your friends. Make sure you're home because guaranteed before bed, your child's going to tell you about all these fears and they're going to need you. Um, Sometimes for the first week of new school years, sometimes, before going on a trip, first trip or first day camp or sleepaway camp without parents,
Yes.
things like that. You're going to be really needed the day before.
Yes.
So be sure to be around.
Schedule, clear your schedule. Awesome. So let's go back to this COVID. You touched on that earlier a little bit about kids. I talk to many teachers in my in my business, and they all say the social emotional regulation in the classroom and coming back into the classroom and taking on that regular schedules they had and the way they performed is
Mhm.
not working in the classroom right now. It's very regulated, and teachers are having hard time, right?
Mhm.
So how do we clear this COVID, I guess leftover behaviors that kids are bringing it into the classroom? How can we help them?
I think we have to look beyond the behavior and see the feeling underneath. So, not punish the behavior, but realize that, sometimes, a lot of times, fear comes out as anger. We know that as parents. When we lose a child in a shopping center, our primary feeling is fear. But when we see that child again, we're angry. How
Mhm.
dare you run away from me? Don't do that again, right?
Yes.
Um, and kids, they're not very good at expressing their emotions yet. You see how they feel through their behavior. So a child who's constantly kicking everybody else is dealing with something internally. And it's great that teachers, um, recognize that and deal with what's happening underneath that behavior.
Mhm.
Um, and I think, too, of course, coming back into a classroom with expectations, you know, it generally takes about 21 days, 3 weeks to begin new habits again. So takes some kids a lot longer. Kids that are not neurotypical, takes them a bit longer to get back into the groove of routines and expectations. So everybody having a little patience with getting back on track after COVID
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
helpful.
I love what you said. Don't look at the behavior. Look at what's behind that, right? What is causing it, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
fear is causing that behavior. And
Mhm.
with 30 kids in the classroom or 26 six in the classroom, it's hard for teachers to bring that regulation for everyone at the same time, right? And if they are, as you said, differently wired or learning abilities are different, that's also going to affect. And then we demand more work on them while they're not regulated. That's hard.
Yes, because teachers feel the pressure that they have to make up, time for learning loss or missing parts of they didn't get in the last 3 grades. Like,
Yes.
so there's a lot of pressure on teachers too, but they can only do what they can do, right? Nobody expects miracles in this first year that's everybody's back.
So, what tip can we give the teachers? Because right now it's sort of like we're in a period where kids socially, emotionally are not regulated. They're very hard at school. They're having hard time. The teachers are trying to find out what's the best way, and the parents, on the other hand, don't know what to do either because they're sending them to school. They're not doing their work, so there's this clash, right? It's kind of the problems kind of surface in both places now. So how can we help them? What can we do?
Well, I would suggest focus more on that social emotional um, regulation because I mean kids are always going to learn fractions. They're always going to pick up information, but relationships in the school are the best part that teachers provide. And um, you there's no saying that kids can't learn until their needs are met, whether it's physical, they're hungry, or whether it's social or emotional, that they've been understood. So when teachers um, appreciate that kids have these feelings and name those feelings and acknowledge those feelings, then the kids can move on and start learning again. So just giving everybody a lot of leeway, a lot of room, validating feelings. And of course, you still correct kids and say, no, it's not all right to kick your friends.
Mm-hmm.
um, and repetition over and over and over and over again. During COVID, maybe little Jared could kick his friends, but not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the brain works with repetition. The young children need a lot of repeat, repeat, repeat. So those pathways get reinforced in their brains and they get it eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your book, you said in the unschooling to university, because you are an unschooling mom. All your three kids were unschooled, right?
Yeah, 5.
Five kids. Five kids. So the relationship matters most in the world cramped with content. So that's kind of where school gets in the way of social emotional because there's a content and there's a test at the end of it, right?
Right. You're right. But and then parents, I think, all too often expect teachers to be miracle workers and do everything, right? Be the parent, be the social emotional counselor, teach the kids all the facts, and yeah, teachers can only go so far or do so much with their resources, but that relationship with the adult, the teacher, that is such a primary relationship for that year. And yes, for teachers to spend time on that social emotional piece, I think does help the kids. And they can keep on, I've seen it, kids just keep on learning. I mean, when they're teenagers and they can learn things really, really fast and catch up a lot. But they can't, they do need people skills. Everybody needs people skills. 80% of people get fired at work, not because of technical
Mm-hmm.
ability, but because they can't get along with other people, right? So that is so important, is to um, teach that emotional social regulation.
Maybe a little bit of revamping in our school system to
Oh,
include
yes.
include more of that, right? So
Yeah.
let me go back to your book about discipline without distress, and parenting with patience, right? Like that one. Tell us some tips in terms of fear. Like I think parents also fear about parenting. It's a big fear, right?
Oh, yes. Parenting is one big 20-year batch of anxiety. And then it doesn't end. And then you have grandchildren come and then you start fearing for them.
Yes.
I'm discovering. Um, yeah, so definitely parents fear all kinds of things. Oh my gosh. And a lot of it's valid. A lot of it is the media giving you more and more things to fear. Everything from what you feed your kids to letting them go outside and play. Without what age should we let them go take the bus alone? All those fears. And sometimes we can hamper our children's development because of our fears.
Mhm.
And so knowing age appropriateness, like what age can I let my child walk to the park alone? What age is developmentally they can do it? What age should I give my child a cell phone? What age should I let them handle their homework and let them take on that responsibility and I let it go? So there's a lot of questions and worries parents have, not of what kids can do and what's normal. With little kids, we're always looking and comparing. Hey, that child's walking and my child's not yet. Is something wrong with my child? So worries are good. They say research shows that parents are the first adult to pick up that there's developmental problems with their child because they do compare and they worry and they bring them into the doctor. So that's a good thing. But there's also unrealistic worries like, oh, if my child takes a bus to school, they might get kidnapped by a stranger. And, that is statistically not going to happen, but it does impact a child's development. The cell phone is one of the worst things for alleviating parents' fears, but constraining our children and not letting them figure out their own problems, right? So we give our kids a cell phone and say, hey, call me if you need anything. Call me if you've forgotten your lunch at school. Call me if you need a ride. And yet, in the olden days, kids used to problem solve all that themselves and create resilience by figuring it out on their own without that lifeline to parents. So we really do hamper that a bit with our fears.
Hmm. Let's touch on this phone and then online addiction a little bit for younger kids, because I work with quite a younger kids, right? Even last night I was on a call with one of the parent, talking about their child. Um, the more you give, sometimes like they have structured time for this child to go online and play and be with his friends and play online and watch some YouTubes that they're allowed.
Mhm.
But then on top of it, they're now trying to do it even while they're supposed to do work or while they're working. So there's no boundary. They don't know the boundary. Where am I stepping over? And then they start lying sometimes too, right? That
Mhm.
comes to effect. So how does a parent set up these boundaries, and how can they trust? Because internet is internet. You can search all day long.
Yes, don't we? um, so I, in my books, I am a very big promoter of educate your kids, but let them be. So, um, so teach them every time you see something that you should teach them, like a phishing email, or teach them a, a website that might not be good when they're young. I'm talking like probably talking the age group of 5 to 13. Okay,
Okay. Good.
that's when you have the most teaching ability. You have the most um, sway with them, that everything.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good. As much as you can teach them, but also trust them. Trust them that if they see something that bothers them, they'll come to you. Now, they won't come to you if you take it away, right? So I'm not a big fan of taking away kids' technology. I'm a big fan of moderation. I'm a big fan of having times in your family where there is tech-free time, like having family dinners or when people come over to socialize, make sure everybody in the family is off their technology. Yes, for sure. But I've never put time limits on my kids because I believe that this is a technology they need for future. They need it for their jobs, their education, and it takes a lot of time. To learn how to code a website takes so much time and research and trial and error. I code my own websites and I love doing it. And I will start at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. And by 5 o'clock, I'm still in my pajamas and I don't know where the day went, but I was having so much fun. And I can see kids who love that too. They're creating something, they're enjoying something on the internet. They don't want to give it up with a time limit.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm lucky. My child I worried about the most for being addicted, he actually is working for a major video game maker now. Right. So that was his career path, and it's many career paths, especially in STEM. There's a lot of necessary need to be on screen time. But I also recognize that parents come in different comfort levels. Absolutely, they do. There are families that limit it here, and there are families that unlimited on this continuum, and everybody in between. So, yeah.
I want to touch on one thing that you just said there is like some kids are prone to be more consumers than producers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just want to consume. They're not even looking at how was this made? They're not even going to get curious about how is that made? And especially with this passive, absorption of all this information that's thrown at them and social stuff online, they're becoming more and more, want to consume.
Yes. Yes, there is a good difference between consumers and producers for sure. But it is fantastic. Like when they look up all their answers to their questions, and especially questions that we don't want to answer, the ones on bodies and all that stuff. If we're uncomfortable, they can find good information. And I know there's a lot of bad information out there, but I think my experience with my kids and my friends' kids is they're pretty savvy in what they believe and stuff. And especially if you talk to them about it, if parents keep those lines of conversation open and talk to them about what's fake news, what's a credible website, what's not a credible website for information, and help them steer those things. Teachers do it in school, parents should do it at home for sure. One thing I want to say is there's a lot of research out there that says that children do not become addicted to the internet or consuming, no matter how many hours they consume, if they're raised in a very nurturing family, right? So it's not, addictions are they create brain impairment. That's what addictions are. And they're usually from a lot of toxic stress when kids are raised in a family under really bad experiences. So for typical families, no matter how many hours your child spends on TikTok, they're not going to develop addiction issues, right? If you're a warm and nurturing family.
And communication.
Yes. And keep those lines of communication open. Yeah.
The more you have it, because then they can shut down and just be there too, right? That's I see in some kids is parents are busy doing their own things, and then the kids just consuming from here. But then you're talking about a family that's nurturing, where they come together one part of the day where they are eating or they're having dinner and communicating, and communication is key.
Yes, but also, having some family created rules on technology. So maybe Sunday afternoon, everybody goes out for a walk or goes to the playground and kicks around a soccer ball. Having those things. But we parents are just as bad. We're on our technology consuming too, right? And the kids see that. And when they're little kids, they pester us. And when they're big kids, they leave us alone because they want to be on their tech. And recognizing that that's okay as long as there's other times that you engage with each other. Have a family board game night, or there are things you do together without technology.
Perfect. So just to go back to, giving some parents help with, so taking away is not going to work in the future that we're coming up to, right? Where technology is going to be everywhere. I mean, with the AI coming in so strong in these past few months, we can see we're going to be surrounded by it. So our kids has to learn that because they can't be isolated from that.
Yes. And you know what? Somebody's got to make all that AI and fix it, and that's going to be your kids. There's going to be a lot of careers in STEM and computers. And if you deny it to your kids, you're denying a lot of good things out there of what to do, of coding and creating. And even if they don't do that, there's a lot of related careers like cybersecurity. That is big, and that's just going to grow. And as much as we don't want it to, our lives are becoming way more technical. I traveled last month, and nothing is paper anymore. Even in countries that traditionally have been slow to get onto credit cards, or everything is done on your phone.
Yes.
Pretty well. So
Absolutely. Yeah. It's no longer, you got to get with the technology, but how do we set healthy rules and boundaries?
modeling is good. Kids will respect you if you model the boundaries you set for them too. Like, it's got to be family boundaries, not kid boundaries, and then parents do what they want. You have to model things. For example, I shut down my computer at 6 o'clock at night. I will not look at any more emails. I am done for the day. And I show my kids, bam, 6 o'clock, my lid goes down. And they have to find boundaries too, because their lives are so enmeshed with work and technology, and free time. It's all one blob. They have to create their own self-care and um, you know, and I think we all model it from each other too.
Yes. Can you tell us about the books you have? You have 5 books. They're amazing. Like, I have them on my shelf right here. So can you tell us which one of them would be the best for a parent to read, who's going through a lot of stress? Because this show is about fear and stress and anxiety. Which one of those 5?
I would say one of my favorites is Parenting with Patience, because it's a very quick read. It's only 176 pages. And it really goes through how to help kids with their feelings, whether it's anger, frustration, fear. Good part there on active listening to them. It has a section on temperament. So which temperament is your child? It has a really good charts on what to expect at different ages. What can kids be capable of? And also at the back, it has a lot of tools when kids are angry or frustrated to calm them down, right? At all ages. So that's probably my favorite book, is Parenting with Patience.
Awesome. And then what about the Unschooling to University? What does that cover, so people can see if that's another book they can dive into?
Yeah, that's my non-punitive education book. And it's for teachers too. It's focusing on how relationships are really what we need in this age of technology. Learning is everywhere, everything on the internet that you want to learn, but relationships are really what we need in person. And that's what was missing during COVID. And we're feeling that now. So it's also on more alternative ways that kids can learn, what learning you should expect at different ages. And lots of ideas of, for example, teaching kids how to learn math without using workbooks, how to learn math in real life. And lots of different things.
Thank you. Thank you. And the last question I have for you is like, for parents who are watching this now, one of the biggest things that I see with my students that I work with as well is the fear of, we talked about a little bit about internet and how to structure a home culture around this, right? What about in terms of this AI coming in and people say, you know, it's going to take over their creativity or they're not going to write it, their plagiarism, like, some of the conversations that happens, even in my son's classroom about handing in assignments, teenagers, they want to find the shortcut to things, right? But which I think is smart sometimes, because one of my student one time, I meet them online. I left her to do her multiplication. I came back into her space, and she was asking Siri, what is 9 times 9, to get the answers to write it down. She wasn't going to think about it. She was going to ask Siri. So when I came into the room, she thought it was, she was going to get in trouble because I told her to do it, not to ask Siri.
Oh, no.
But I thought it was interesting because when I came in, I said, you know what? You're actually thought about asking her. You're asking her, you're listening to her, and you're writing it. So you've actually done, 3 different modalities of encoding it in your brain. So now that's okay. You can continue to do that. So she was shocked. I said, no, you can ask Siri for it. That's fine. Right. So how do we make these tools for them rather than we fear that they're going to use it?
Well, I'm really excited at how that's going to open everything up, and like you said, it's a tool. And in teaching math, I mean, we all worried about the calculator. If we give kids calculators, they're not going to learn the times table. I had, so I unschooled my children, which is 5 kids, which is not really research, but I never taught any of them the multiplication tables, right? I gave them calculators and said, here. And they progressed through math from grade 8 to grade 12. And they learned along the way what 9 times 9 was, whatever method they used to learn, whether it was asking Siri or using a calculator. So I think I think assessment is going to change, but kids are still going to learn how to write. They're going to learn how to use this technology, which is fantastic for the future. And they're just going to learn different things. And I think they're probably going to learn handwriting again, because I was telling my son, I said, you better start learning cursive, because they won't let you have computers anymore during exams because you might use AI. So you have to handwrite your thoughts. Or you may have to do oral presentations, right? Because now we know, we as educators, you still want to know what kids learn and absorbed, but maybe writing's not going to be the way, which is really, really good for some kids. I have one son who hates writing. He always had trouble meeting word count for university, and he had the gift of saying his thoughts very succinctly, but no, they wanted 500 words. So he really struggled. And I think, Chat GPT would have really, really helped him with that. But, not so much now. But yeah, I think we should wait and see how we can use this tool rather than worrying about it. I really do.
That's another fear.
Yeah.
Sparked up with Chat GTP and all the AIs coming out. But something that I always find wonderful when I talk to you is about how calm you talk about having 5 kids, unschooling them. You just make learning so natural. Like even in your voice, it feels so natural. But that's the biggest fear for many parents is, how am I going to educate? What education system should I choose? What type of books should I use? It's a whole worry, right, when they come to that age. But
And
you make it so peaceful. I love it.
And especially so now that parents have so many more choices. I get new parents that kids are going to kindergarten and they're like, what school should I pick? Oh no, we have private, public, Catholic, homeschooling, unschooling, Montessori. What do I do? What's the best? And I just say, you can't force your child to learn. They are going to learn whether they're whatever school they go to, however they're taught, the brain is wired to learn, and that hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so don't worry about it. And they do. They will. They'll
Yeah.
continue. They're parents.
That's what parents do. It's normal. Fear is normal, right? Normal part of life. So thank you so much for being here today. I always have, as I said, pleasure talking to you about unschooling. You just make it sound so beautiful. And some people do. That's what works for them, right? Their
Yep. What
family.
works for
Yeah.
them works for their kids. May not work for everyone, but we have lots of choices in education, which is good. And different types work for different kids. I mean, when my son wanted to learn calculus, he did need a tutor. He did um, need a textbook. So that's the way he learned. So it's all good. Kids will learn no
Mm.
matter what.
Yeah, they will. They will for sure. And how can they find your book? Is it on Amazon? They can find, or is it on your website? I'll
It
put.
is everywhere. If you want to support your local bookstore, go in and order it there.
Okay.
And yeah, it's everywhere else, but
Okay, I will put your book's names in our show notes so people have it, they can buy it. And that book you recommended, the smaller version of the Parenting with Patience,
yeah.
it's that will reduce some stress.
Yes, it will. It will help you. It's a quick read with lots of tools for parents, and yeah, I think it will really help you handle your child's stress, anger, frustration, and also yours too, because that's part of parenting too.
Yes, and that's one thing that I did not touch with, but quickly we can touch on is induced fear. I find that when I'm fearful of something, my son feels it.
Yes, they pick up on the vibes you give off. Absolutely, they do. They read you a lot more than you think, and they pick up on it, and then they act out. So I think the key is keeping yourself calm and just trying to keep an aura of calmness so kids stay calm. But sometimes they're jumping off the walls, so there's not much you can do other than try and calm them down. So the Parenting with Patience book is um, 3 parts. Get yourself calm first. So that whole section is on you. Then you're in control. You get your child calm, and
Mhm.
all that section's on them. And then the third section is deal with the problem.
Mhm. So you give strategies to deal
Oh,
with.
tons.
Awesome. Awesome. So I will put that book down. Thank you so much, Judy, for taking your time. And fear is not a factor for you because you've actually stepped over that fear by going to Toastmaster and you do presentation all the time now.
I do. And I'm just this month is my first getting back in person on a stage presentation. So I'm nervous. I'm feeling the fear, but I'm sure it'll be okay.
Yes, yes. Can you share with us one thing you do before you go on stage?
One thing I do is I take deep, deep breaths. Yes, really deep breathe, because the first words that come out are very nervous words, so shaky words. But and I memorize my first minute of what I'm going to say, and that way, after that, I'm off and running. So the first minute's the worst minute, but if I have it memorized, I just get through it, and then I keep going.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you, all of you, for staying with us during this wisdom circle. I think you got so much from Judy. She's always full of, so many tips and strategies. Check her book out. I will put the link. So next week, we'll be having another guest on our show on Wednesday at 11 a.m. PST. If you're interested in making learning easy, you can check out our website, www.learningsuccessacademy.com. Until next time, let's make fear not a factor for anyone. So thank you so much, Judy, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much too. Have a great week.